hearing before the Board of School Directors concerning Mr. Apple's employment. When we ended the third evening of hearings, Mr. Apple was on the witness stand. It was in the course of his direct examination of Mr. Apple by his attorney, Mr. Martin, and so we'll pick up there. Mr. Apple, you may return to the witness chair, and once you're settled, Mr. Martin may begin. You're still on the road, so once he's seated, Mr. Martin, you may proceed.
Mr. Apple, before I begin with new questions about the launch of the Red Zone, I'd like to follow up on one thing that I questioned you about the last hearing, and that is that when Dr. Etter testified, he indicated that there was some question as to whether there had been 2 or 3 stainless steel tables. And I'd like you please to turn over to Exhibit 2 in our binder, which is the thinner binder. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And I'd like you to look, please, at the top, Roman numeral 1, capital A, it says 3 kitchen tables dash stainless. What did you mean when you wrote that on this list?
There were 3 tables that I had in my possession that were basically, well, they were taken to the concession areas of Juniata High School. The day of January 1st, there were 2 tables removed from there. One had already been priorly removed by Dr. Yarger,
And where had that been moved to, do you know?
his residence.
And that was, you said prior to January 1st?
Yes.
And had you assisted in that move?
No.
And so what was the purpose of you putting this here in this email attachment going to Dr. Etter?
It was summarizing everything that I intended for concessions and things that I had physically moved from different dates with Dr. Yarger from the elementary schools to either Juniata High School, East Juniata, or Tuscarora Junior High School.
Okay. Do you know where Dr. Yarger had moved that first table from? Was that also at
That was from Black Tuscarora.
Black Tuscarora also?
Yes, that's why it's listed there.
Do you know when that had been moved by him?
Prior to January 1st.
Do you know if it was after classes that ended before break?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I know he had moved one, and that's what I can answer to.
Okay, let me turn now to the luncheon at the Red Zone. How did it come about that you and others went out for lunch that day?
June 19th was my birthday. Came to work, there was discussion to go out for lunch that day. I had no preference. I was originally going to take the entire day off, but on the 18th, I was told to come in because we wanted to do something for lunch on Tuesday. Well, the 19th. I don't know what day of the week it was. I can't remember that. I want to say Tuesday, but I can't remember.
And who expressed to you interest in you coming in to do that?
Mrs. Ship, and all the staff.
So you went in on your birthday and was, who all went out to the Red Zone that day?
Brandon Ship, Melissa Adam, Lisa Kyle, Kurt Kondo, Andy Kinder, myself.
And did you know the waitress that day?
Yes.
How did you know her?
She was a former student at junior high and then at the high school later when I was assistant principal.
And what did you order for lunch?
I went to the Red Zone, it would be either something with buffalo chicken burger or wings.
Do you remember that day in particular?
Probably had wings,
Okay. And what did you have to drink?
2 Yinglings,
Did you have anything else to drink?
a shot provided by the waitress to me.
Now, when you say provided by, was that one that was charged to you or to the party?
No, it was my birthday, and she basically gave that to me.
And she made that explicitly clear to you?
Yes,
All right. And approximately how long did the lunch last?
hour.
And at the end of the time, did you see what arrangements were made to pay the check?
Yes, I believe Mrs. Schiff laid the payment book where she was at the table that day.
And did you notice anything unusual about it?
No, normally if Bill's there, whatever, I would have had to tip under one of the glasses, something like that. But there wasn't anything there.
Okay, so can you explain that a little bit more when you say there wasn't anything there, tip under the
There was
rug?
there was no open money. The book was there. She said, hey, listen, her had to get back to junior high school, workers permit, call was being asked for completion. They were coming back to the school. I was there, I was the last one to leave the table. Having lots of thought on that, I knew where people were sitting, to my right, Police Kyle, then Alyssa Adams, across from me was Mr. Condo, and Mrs. Schiff, Mr. Kinzer.
And did you contribute toward the payment at all?
Yes,
What did you contribute?
at least $20. I told Dr. Eric $30 to $35. I know what I carry in my pocket. I don't carry a wallet. I carry $40, $50, a couple 20s, maybe a couple 5s and some 1s. And that's usually for gas money or if I want to get something like at Tom's after school or during school.
So how precisely do you remember what you left?
At least 20. I told Dr. Eder 30, 35. Based on that day, I know I cannot have anything paid by district for alcohol like that. I'm a veteran of the district, a veteran of education.
Now, when you told Dr. Eder 30, 35, why is that number, today you're saying at least 20?
20 is what I would have given for a tip. 30, 35 would have covered my beverages and possibly even my meal.
Okay, but you don't remember clearly how much you put down?
No, I do not.
Okay. Are you certain you did put something down?
Yes, I always do.
All right. Have you or any members of your family ever worked in food service?
Wife did. Prior to engagement marriage, she worked as a waitress. My daughter currently has assumed that county line restaurant.
And their pay for that work, is that primarily wage or tip?
Mostly tips.
Now, did you say anything to Ms. Schiff about whether you'd be coming back to the school that afternoon?
In the discussions that were there, people were talking, didn't really want to come back either. I understand that. So at that point, we were going through graduation schedules, doing a lot of things with POs, the whole deal. It was the day to step back and just look at everything we've done. Take a look at it.
Let me stop you. How recently had graduation been before?
About a week and a half prior.
Okay, so all students were gone from the building at that point? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, continue.
And looked at her and said, I'm not coming back this afternoon. I didn't want to come in at all today to begin with. It's my birthday.
And did she say anything in response to you?
She was concerned about getting back to school and filling out the workers permit and that issue at the time, because she was getting repeated texts.
Okay, when you say workers permit, I believe there was some testimony. Are you referring to students you want to?
Student workers permit is issued for students under child labor laws. We need to go through it for federal program.
And say that she would mark you off?
She didn't really acknowledge me, but I told her at least twice, I'm off, I'm not coming back.
Okay. Had you previously spoken with her about attendance keeping in that manner?
Yes, during the course of the year, if I was off for hunting, etc., I would tell her I'm taking today off, I'm gonna take tomorrow off. I would call her, or I would even text her and tell her I'm taking tomorrow as well.
Now, there was some reference to gold slips in some prior testimony as a means of
Yes.
making a notation when time was off.
Yes,
Is that something that during the 2017-2018 school year, you or Ms. Ship were doing?
I did not fill out a gold slip the entire year. When we switched over to ASOP gold slip, I didn't fill those gold slips out. Sabrina looked at it, as you tell me, I'll put in your time. The only times I checked my attendance was close to deer season and end of the school year prior to June 30th. Those are the times I checked my attendance personally.
Why did you check at deer season?
I looked at my hours and calculate based on deer season. Everyone in administration knows I like to hunt. If I could take a few days there, I would take vacation during the year. That hadn't always been the case in the school district.
Before you began testifying, there was a stipulation entered into the record that at the end of the 2018 school year, there were certain days that you could have taken paid that you did not, and the stipulation was there were 4 days. Do you agree with that?
Yes,
And is that something in other school years that has happened?
I think it can reflect that we even went to the point where our vacation days were not rolled over. And I had they would be classified as personal days from years past that I had not utilized, and they were banked, grandfathered, so to speak. And that was there, I think it was 20+ days there as well. I never used all my time. I was always here. I was always here when I didn't need to be here.
All right, and so at some point, that system switched over in terms of your ability to roll over days year to year?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall when that was approximately?
I believe about the time Mr. Miley and Mr. Musselman came in, or a year or two prior to that, we lost rollover capability. Use your allowance of days where you lost them.
So that afternoon, you did not go back to the high school, correct?
I brought Mr. Condo back for the review of Mr. Condo's residence.
And am I correct that the school district year, in terms of having days that you either have to use or lose, when does that go to? Is that a calendar year, or how is that measured?
What fiscal year? I know Dr. Yarder, when he came on board, gave us even flex up to September 1st to use those days if we had days. If you had allowance, if you had 4 or 5 days left over, you could use them until September 1st. Mr. Miley was familiar with that as well.
What is the fiscal year?
July 1 to June 30.
Okay, but there had been some allowance made that you could carry over till September?
So you would not lose days. Administrators lost days every year. Most of the staff sitting here lost days.
Let me ask you to turn to tab 6 in the Fed binder. Can you identify this?
You're on a policy, 706.
706.1. Would you please read paragraph 1, which is marked purpose?
The board believes that the efficient administration of the district requires a disposition of property and goods no longer necessary for the maintenance of the educational program or their operation in the school district. Unneeded surplus and obsolete property can consume valuable storage space. This policy is intended to allow for the disposal of such property quickly and efficiently, thus avoiding future unnecessary handling and storage.
Let me ask you now to look down at paragraph number 4, or guidelines. Would you read that, please?
Disposal methods.
Yes.
Superintendent shall determine the means of disposing of obsolete or surplus property. Disposal of all items with an estimated value of $1,000 or more shall require approval of the board of directors prior to disposal. Some items have no sale value. Worthless items may be deposited in dumpsters, burned, or hauled to local dump or landfill. These items also may be donated to charitable organizations.
I'm sorry, I don't need you to read through all
Okay.
this. When you were with Dr. Yarger, Lac Tuscarora, and later when you were going through the other elementary schools there later in January, the items that you saw and that you moved out of those buildings, did you believe that there was some current use that those items were being put to?
No,
Did you have any understanding as to your ability to rely upon the superintendent as to having permission to move any types of surplus property?
I believe he was the one telling me that if I wanted under my role as director of secondary ed to utilize or implement things in another building, that was coming from the chief.
And as far as you understood, your testimony was that he said that to you. Is that your understanding of being in accord with policy 706.1?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you now that I'm looking at the charges that have been issued by the administration. There are several allegations in here, and in particular, if anyone else wants to look, I'm looking at tab 3 in the thick binder. Perhaps you could open that up to follow along.
Where exactly?
If you look on the second page of tab 3,
Okay.
paragraph number 8.
Okay.
Do you see that in front of you?
Yes.
It makes reference on January 12th to taking and or receiving from others certain district property, including kitchen racks, pots and pans, backpack, extension cords, water pitchers, and then it mentions Fayette, Tuscarora Valley, Thompsontown, to your hunting ground or personal residence. Before I ask about that last part of that sentence, do you disagree that you had moved kitchen racks, pots and pans, backpack, extension cords, or water pitchers?
I moved those.
Now, the last part of that sentence says where they were left for your personal use. Did you ever intend to take any of these items for your personal use?
I had no need for any of those items for personal use or intent for personal use.
So what was your purpose in taking them?
To reallocate either the concessions or Juniata High School.
Now, paragraph 9 contains certain allegations, according to the administration, that you made intentionally false statements in a separate lawsuit that was filed in this matter, not in this matter, a separate lawsuit that was filed. I'm going to go through these point by point. A makes an allegation that you falsely stated that you removed abandoned items from a closed elementary school to secure them at your hunting camp. Now, do you have a hunting camp?
No, I do not.
How do you characterize it?
Land with log landings sporadically through the property.
Do you disagree with the statement that you removed abandoned items from closed elementary schools to secure them in your hunting land?
I dispute that.
In what way?
I don't have any use for them at that location in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, specifically as to the removal of the items, though, do you dispute that part? That they were in fact moved to your hunting land?
Not all of them, no.
Okay. And you testified, I believe, that some went to another location, is that right?
Yes,
And what was that other location?
either in my four-door Dakota in the back seat, which ended up on my porch, or in my shed.
Okay. And why did they go different places?
I transported my youngest daughter and my oldest daughter at times to different functions.
Can you just clarify the record for the record, sorry? Can you just clarify for the record, your shed that you referenced, is that your home?
That's my home, it's a shed.
Thank you,
That's all it is, it's a shed. It's not a garage, it's a shed.
thank you. But is that your personal residence?
Yes,
Thank you.
All right, the administration has said that your use of the word abandoned, which it has put in quotes in this charge, was a false statement by you. From your perspective, do you agree or disagree that the items that you removed were abandoned?
I was told by the superintendent, teachers hand things out. The items that are left behind are there. They either will be junk, or you choose what you want to use at your other locations.
Now, how about the use of the word secure, which is in quotes here? Did you intend to secure the items?
The tables and the chairs that were at my location, the hunting ground or private ground, I secured them because I wanted to know where they were, and I was going to place them where I intended to place them, which was at junior high school, either in classroom or at the concession.
Now, in B, it states, now this is a double negative, so it states that you falsely stated you never intended to use the tables as quote-unquote B tables. I realize you testified about this to some degree, I'm not trying to belabor it, but the specific allegation by the administration in this charge is that you stated you did not intend to use these tables as B tables, but in fact you did intend to use them as B tables. So in this lawsuit where this statement was made that you did not intend to use these tables as B tables, is that true?
As I testified and as I've spoken, Dr. Yarder's intent was to use them as that. I was interviewed originally by Dr. Etter in regards to that. And I told him so. I did not lie. I told him I was not going to lie to him. I did not. I had no intent to lie to him about it. And I also told him that day, as he was getting up and leaving, I know you cannot do that. Those things were returned. And I had plans for that.
So specifically, when it comes to the allegation of you stating that you did not intend to use them as B tables, is that accurate?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to ask you about letter C and letter E together because they seem to go logically. C, the allegation is you were threatened by the district solicitor and coerced into signing a confession. E, that you were threatened with criminal charges by board of directors of the Juniata County School District. Now, did you feel threatened did you feel any time threatened that criminal charges would be filed against you?
Dr. Etter met with me, and it was him and I. And Dr. Etter, again, I will reiterate this from last meeting, he said there's an element in the board that will not forgive you. And I've read the statement, I did not like all the punishment was there. I felt it was over the top and harsh, especially since no one was speaking to me about this.
Let me stop you there. When you say no one was speaking to you about this, what do you mean?
The board,
Had anyone from the board spoken to you about this issue?
not in this detail, that I was sitting in front of me that day from Dr. Etter. No,
And that would have been your meeting on February 11th, is that correct?
correct.
The administration here claims that you lied in saying that you felt coerced into signing that document. Was it true or false that you felt coerced into signing the document?
Again, Dr. Etter reiterated this in his testimony. I mean, I've been through many, many things and issues in this district. I know he does his job. I knew he was serious that day. And when he stood from his seat and told me if you don't sign it, I've been issued by the board to press charges, criminal charges. I knew he was serious.
And am I correct that on D here, let me go to D. The allegation is that you, again, a double negative, that you stated falsely that you did not have access to and did not oversee a petty cash fund which was used to pay for your birthday lunch at the Red Zone. And I know there's been testimony about this already, but specifically as to this charge, I'll ask you this. In stating that you did not have access to the petty cash fund, is that true or false?
That's true, I did not.
Sabrina Shipp stated only she and one other secretary had the combination to the safe where it was kept. Do you agree with that or not?
That's correct.
You don't know the combination.
No, no way, shape, or form.
How about the question of overseeing the petty cash fund?
Overseeing, I did not oversee. There would be discussions. Nancy Kramer was my assistant. Kelly Strasser was there as a temporary assistant, and Nancy Kinzer. Mrs. Shipp would oversee. As things that were mentioned, what was bought and purchased with, it may come after the fact to me. But again, based on the policy and what's there, I never received any do's and don'ts over the course of my career with that policy either.
Did you ever receive any direction from the superintendent in terms of your responsibility with respect to a petty cash fund?
I never had, with the 13 superintendents that I was under, never had a discussion on petty cash in my career.
Did you see any memos or emails or letters or any instructions of any sort from the superintendent or anyone in the district for that matter as to how the petty cash fund was to be handled?
No. And since I've read audit, I never remember seeing an email in regards to an end-of-year audit or paperwork in regards to that, or recommendations or meeting of concern with the petty cash at Juniata High School.
Were you responsible for conducting any audits in the course of your position?
No, that was never laid out in the job description that I was an auditor.
Did you ever see any other principal or director of secondary education in the district perform any sort of audit?
Not in regards to cash and monies, no. In regards to other paperwork, yes, we take care of individual buildings.
And with respect to the audit for the petty cash fund, who within the district would perform that function?
I believe that is the business manager and the district office business personnel that would do that audit.
I'm going to ask you now to look at paragraph 10 in the statement of charges. I'm going to read this and then ask you a question. It states, or in the alternative, now this is coming after those specific allegations of alleged to have been made in that separate lawsuit, or in the alternative, you deliberately provided misinformation, material to the investigation, which was being conducted by the Juniata County School District and its agents into your and the now former superintendent's actions in January of 2019 and your individual actions in June of 2018. Said misrepresentations were made with the apparent intent to receive a a lesser disciplinary penalty for committing the aforementioned infractions. Did you deliberately provide misinformation material to the investigation that the district or its agents, including, for instance, Dr. Eder, was conducting into your and the now former superintendent's actions in January of 2019 and your individual actions in June of 2018?
No. I provided Dr. Eder, as we reviewed last time, the email. I asked him if he had any questions to contact me. Again, we have worked together on many things over our careers. I'm not going to lie to Scott Eder. That's where it is.
And did you believe that in sending that email to him, you had given him a comprehensive list of all the things that have been moved?
I gave him a comprehensive list, and again, as he said in that email, any questions, contact me.
Now, looking again at the statement of charges, paragraph 11, 12, and 13 make reference to 3 criminal charges that were filed. I asked Dr. Kovacs some questions about this. You heard that testimony. To the best of your knowledge, when was the district aware that these charges had been filed or were about to be filed?
They were aware of this when the injunction was filed.
Okay, when you say the injunction, you're referring to the civil suit?
Yes,
Do you have any belief that Dr. Kovacs stated that he was aware before the charges were going to be filed, they were going to be filed? Do you have any belief as to that?
yes.
What is that?
Superintendent would be notified by PSP, just like I would be as an administrator and high school principal. If charges were going to be filed, the state police would notify me as a principal, and in this case, most definitely notify the superintendent.
And when you made reference to the separate civil suit, are you referring to the fact that the criminal charges were made a part of that case also?
Yes,
Paragraph 14 says you failed to provide the district with written notice of your arrest for the aforelisted 3 felonies as required by, and then it cites 24 PS section 111, open parentheses, 4, close parentheses, 4, open parentheses, lower J, close parentheses. Did you try to hide the fact from the district that these charges had been filed against you?
no,
What was your understanding as to the district's knowledge of the charges?
based on being at the injunction civil suit at the county courthouse, I believe they already knew the charges were there.
And how soon after the charges were filed were you at that court appearance? Do you recall?
A day or two.
And did you willfully fail to notify them in writing of the existence of these charges?
No. At that point in time, everything that was taking place, no.
And so why did you not send them a notice in writing of the charges having been filed?
The injunction was taking place, charges were filed.
Was there any reporting in the newspaper of the filing of the charges?
Front page. Affidavits, full affidavits
When you say affidavits, you mean the affidavit of probable cause?
from the state police, yes.
And that was published in its entirety in the newspaper?
Correct?
And what newspaper was that?
Lewis Town Center,
And is that a newspaper of general circulation in Juniata County?
yes.
Do you know if the administration members of the district read that newspaper on a regular basis?
Yes.
And is the answer to that?
Yes.
If I could have just a minute, please.
Correct.
And you acknowledge that you did not send the written notice that is required under the 24 PS Section 111 4J, correct?
Didn't know it was required, but no, I did not send it.
Are you aware of there being any exception for any of the events that you testified to that you believe that the state police would notify the school district that would accept you from providing that written notice?
I'm going to object to the Santa Claus for a legal conclusion.
I'm asking him if he's aware of it. He gave a lot of reasons why he didn't do it.
Is it really necessary? He said he didn't do it.
Point taken. Now, going back to when you first started with your direct examination, you indicated that as the principal in the district, your job was, quote, pretty much everything. That sound about right?
That's correct, Mr. Neff.
And as a result of being responsible for pretty much everything in your building, isn't it true as principal, you were the lead administrator in your building?
Yes,
So ultimately, it would be you as lead administrator in your building who would be responsible for the petty cash, correct?
I guess so.
And that's not something that's in Sabrina Ship's job description, is it?
Over time, junior high school, again, I will say this, Mr. Neff. Not one superintendent or the business managers ever came to me with recommendations, concerns, issues, or do's and don'ts. The petty cash was there prior to Ed Apple being at junior high school in 1999-2000. And I knew of what it existed as, and that's what I followed with. And the amount of money and things that were in that fund, I used for student and staff recognition.
Now, let me ask you, you assumed the principalship of that building on what date?
2004 fall.
I'd like to object here. I don't think the witness was able to finish his answer.
I don't think he was answering the question.
Well, Mr. Apple, were you finished answering the prior question?
No,
Okay.
the issue at hand was, as I was explaining, over my time, junior high school,
Well, but that wasn't.
That's not responsive.
That wasn't the question.
I asked if Sabrina Ship was responsible for it, and he went off.
I understand. So the question was your secretary, Ms. Ship, responsible for it? That was in response. to-
secretaries were responsible for maintaining the locked up monies and the collection of those monies and what monies were in there and getting the receipts for the purchases of those items.
Thank you. Let's move on, please.
You can turn to tab 18 in the big binder. That's policy 617 that deals with petty cash, correct?
Correct.
And what's the date that was adopted?
August 19th, 2004.
That's right about the time that you came in as the principal at Juniata High School, correct?
Correct.
Wasn't it part of your responsibilities as being pretty much in charge of everything to familiarize yourself with the newly adopted board policies, specifically on petty cash?
I do not remember that policy and that date, Mr. Neff.
Well, wouldn't that be part of your duties as a principal to familiarize yourself with board policies?
Yes,
And you did not familiarize yourself with policy 617?
That's been asked and answered. Let's move on.
Now, during your direct examination, you indicated that Dr. Yarger said it was his intent to use the tables that were removed as meet tables. Is that correct?
yes,
And you said that that was not your intent for the usage of those tables, correct?
never was, never has been.
Who did you tell when Dr. Yarger said that was what his intent was, to let the people know that he was using the meat tables for his own personal benefit?
Comes Dr. Everett.
And when did you tell Dr. Etter that Dr. Yerger had done that?
That was February 4th.
And the tables were actually removed from Black Tuscarora on January 1st, 2019?
Correct.
Your first day as the number 2 guy in the district.
Yes.
And as the number 2 guy in the district, you didn't go to a board member and report what was going on?
No, because my intention for those items was to move them from previous plans as early as summer of 2018.
And you didn't notify the police that Dr. Yerger had told you that he intended to take meat tables and use them for his own personal good, did you?
No, I did not.
Now, if you could turn to tab 19. The disposal of surplus property. You familiar with that policy?
Yes.
And that was adopted February 18th of 2010, correct?
Correct.
You were still a principal at Juniata High School at that time, correct?
Yes.
Now, you read the beginning and then you went down to 4 guidelines about disposal methods. I'd like to draw your attention to 3, delegation of responsibility. Specifically the second paragraph underneath there. You see that?
Yes.
Who does it say shall be responsible for identifying all obsolete and surplus property?
The business manager shall be responsible for identifying all obsolete or surplus property.
And then, as necessary, he may call upon other staff personnel to develop criteria to aid in this identification, correct? That's what the policy says?
Yes.
Are you aware, did the business manager identify the items that were removed on January 1st and January 12th as obsolete and surplus property?
I was going with what Dr. Yarger, as superintendent, said.
Are you aware whether or not the business manager identified the property that you removed on January 1st and January 12th as obsolete or surplus property?
I have no idea that.
And then the next paragraph says the business manager shall submit a request and recommendation concerning the disposition of obsolete and surplus property to the superintendent for consideration or approval. Are you aware if that was done with the items that you removed on January 1st and January 12th?
I have no idea of discussion or emails between Mr. Miley and Dr. Yarger as far as all the items within all the buildings. Again, I never saw a disposition from the district. I went and what Dr. Yarger had said under my role, that I could start looking at and moving things for utilization, implementation in the other buildings as director of secondary ed.
Well, as the director of secondary ed, would you be responsible for knowing what's in policy 706.1 as far as how obsolete and surplus property is to be handled?
The superintendent was telling me to do it.
That's not
I
what
did.
I asked you. I asked you,
I understand what you asked,
could you
and I will
please
answer that.
We slow down a little bit too, please, just in case I'm asked to read back.
All right.
Thanks.
Mr. Apple, the question was, as director of secondary ed, was it your responsibility to be aware of the policy? You can answer that. Did you know the answer?
At that time, I didn't think I needed to know that.
even though you were dealing with surplus property in January of this year?
Correct.
Now, you indicated also in your direct testimony this evening that you told Sabrina Shipp that you weren't going back to work on your birthday, June 19th of 2018.
Correct.
And you indicated Sabrina Shipp did not acknowledge you when you said that, correct?
Correct.
Did you do any follow-up with Sabrina after that to see whether or not she had done what you say you asked her to do?
No, I did not.
Now, you were present when Lori Kilmer was testifying and described the procedure that Act 93 administrators were supposed to follow with regard to reporting off, weren't you?
Act 93,
Yes.
we never had a meeting on Act 93 members to do that explicitly.
So you disagree with Lori Kilmer's testimony that there was different policy for Act 93 administrators?
Most definitely.
Who was present when you left the either $20 to $35 on the table at the red zone?
I was the last one at the table, Mr. Nevin.
So no one would have seen you do that?
No.
Last week during your direct testimony, when you were describing the events of January 1st, 2019, you said that two people couldn't move the tables that were taken out of Black Tuscarora. And then you later testified that you and Dr. Garger unloaded those tables off the back of the district truck out at your hunting pump. Was there anybody else out at your hunting property to help you unload, or was it just the two of you?
No. Slid them off.
And then,
There's a difference between loading and unloading and moving things.
okay, and then on January 25th, you and Jeremy Smith removed the tables from your hunting property. January 27th, removed the tables from your hunting property and brought them back to Virginia High School. Did you load them then?
Yes.
And how many people loaded them then?
2, very difficult.
And you said that this evening that you intended to secure the property out at your hunting property. You wanted to remove it from Lac Tuscarora and secure it, correct?
Yes.
Wasn't Lac Tuscarora locked on January 1st when you arrived there with Dr. Yarder?
Yes.
And your hunting property, there's no structure on there that locks that you could have put the property that you removed in, is there?
No, not one.
You also indicated that there was nowhere else to go with those items, and that's why you took them to your hunting property. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Was it Mountain View a designated storage spot?
I did not realize that at that time. No.
When did you realize Mountain View was a designated storage spot?
The next week, when I went to Mountain View, took a look at Mountain View for the ADY classroom.
Did you take the items to Mountain View then the next week?
No, I had no way to get them there with my truck.
Well, you also testified last week that on January 15th and 16th, there were, I think you said 7 adults and a group of football players that were moving a bunch of items into Mountain View.
Yes.
And you didn't move any of the property from your hunting property or from your truck or from your residence in Mountain View that day when you had all those people, did you?
No.
Now, you also said that you put something in Mr. Fosse's camper. Is that a camper that you you actually own that you purchased from Mr. Fossey?
Yes, sir.
And is that on your hunting property?
Yes, sir.
When did you first learn that there was an investigation going on into Dr. Gardner?
About January 17th, 18th, in that time frame.
And January 27th is when you returned the tables and the other items?
Yes, sir.
You can turn to tab 24, specifically the second page under paragraph 6. First of all, tab 24, that's your partial response to the initial statement of charges, is that correct?
Correct.
And 6, you go partway down where it says Dr. Yarger authorized Mr. Apple?
Yes.
It says Dr. Yarger authorized Mr. Apple to keep the tables on his property until the district obtained storage sheds for the boosters' use. That was your answer in response to the statement of charges initially, correct?
Correct.
But your testimony was that Dr. Yarger told you he wanted to keep the tables as meat tables, so he didn't actually authorize you to hold those for boosters' use, did he?
Yes, he did. I told him that we could not use them for meat tables. As I told Dr. Etter, it was his intent to do so. And as I told Dr. Etter, I know you cannot do that. That is not my intent.
So when did Dr. Yarger give the authority to store the tables on your property for the boosters as opposed to for the meat tables, which is what he told you on January 1st you wanted to use them for?
No, it was a discussion and an argument
When?
that day.
And yet you still told Dr. Etter at one point that the tables were intended to be used as meat tables.
That was Dr. Yarger's intent, most definitely. Again, as I've stated repeatedly, not mine.
And as a principal at Juniata High School back on June 19th, 2018, did you know where the money came from to pay for the lunch that day?
No, I did not.
Did you think? This authorization from Dr. Gardner to keep the tables on your property until the district obtains storage sheds for boosters' use. Mr. Fossey was the principal of Juniata High School at that time, correct?
Yes,
Did you make Mr. Fossey aware that you were securing these items off-site until until the sheds were brought to the high school stadium?
no,
Did you ever seek permission from the board to take the items to secure them at the property for the boosters?
no. Didn't believe I needed to.
Did you ever alert the boosters that you were doing this?
Prior summer, we had discussed things for boosters. as I stated in my last statement in the previous meeting, the band was looking at different things, purchasing, and I told them, we're gonna fix that and change that if at all possible.
Let me slightly modify my question. After you removed the items on January 1st and January 12th, did you alert anybody of the boosters that you had the items and what your intention was for their use?
Not at that time.
The third table that you testified to earlier this evening, that you said Dr. Yarger had removed on his own,
Yes,
was that taken to your hunting property?
no,
Do you know where that table is today?
concession stand.
How did it get from Dr. Yarger to the concession stand?
I basically took it from him and put it there.
When did you do that?
27th, 25th, or 27th, whatever that Sunday was.
You can turn to exhibit 31, page 2. Paragraph 12 specifically. See the paragraph on?
Yes,
It says, in January of 2019, Apple accompanied the then superintendent of the Juniata County School District, Dr. Keith Yarger, for the purpose of collecting items, including furniture, no longer in use for the elementary schools, which were abandoned due to the elementary school consolidation. How do you know that the items were abandoned if you aren't aware of any plan with the business manager pursuant to the policy as to what was to be done with those items?
again, I was going with the superintendent, he's the chief of the school district. And he was giving me authority to do things as director of secondary ed. Like 4 buildings full of items that we could utilize in the 3 secondary schools and offset budget. That's always been what I've done, whether coaching or as an administrator. Try to use what you have, make something out of nothing.
Take a look at the next page, paragraph 14. It says, Apple then transported the items which were temporarily stored on his private property to the sheds during the same week in which the sheds were delivered. And prior to any questions being raised about the permissibility of Apple storing those items temporarily on his private property. See that?
Yes,
And you moved those items January 27th, correct?
correct.
And you just testified a little earlier here that January 17th, you were made aware that there was an investigation going on, correct?
Dr. Yarger.
Dr. Yard with regard to the items that were removed, correct?
No.
No. What did you think the investigation was about that the executive session was happening?
Credit card issues.
And you didn't believe it had anything to do with your actions and Dr. Yarder's actions on January 1st and January 12th?
Not to the degree that it became, no.
But you were aware that they were looking into what happened on January 1st and January 12th, correct?
Yes,
And you were aware of that before you moved the items off of your property back to school property, correct?
yes,
So where you say prior to any questions being raised about the permissibility of Apple storing those items temporarily on his private property, that in fact is not a true statement, is it?
no, disagree.
You just-
Again, I was waiting on the sheds to move things back where I intended them for them to be. I did not know I needed to tell everybody what my intent was with everything. As last meeting was discussed, it was number 2 in the district. So that being said,
Is the 27th after the 17th?
yes,
Okay.
Your point's made, move on, please.
I have no other questions.
Mr. Martin, any correct?
Yes, Mr. Apple, did Dr. Yarger ever use the stainless steel tables that were on your hunting property as meat tables?
no,
Did he, after they were moved there, ever have access to those tables before they were moved to the concessions shed?
no,
He testified, I believe, that there was a locked gate to the property, is that right?
that is correct.
And I'd like to ask you now, following up on questions about the business manager's role. Did you, in the process of going with Dr. Yarger or looking at furniture in the different buildings, believe that you have a responsibility to independently verify if the business manager had made a list of furniture that the superintendent said you could move?
January 11th, we did that.
And that was the inventory you put
Yes.
together? Okay. Mr. Miley was part of that?
Yes,
As of January 1st, when Dr. Yarger, as you testified, said that those items could be moved, did you believe you were under any duty to verify whether the business manager had made a list, as Mr. Neck was suggesting?
no,
You were asked a question about January 15th and some football players who had been enlisted to help move some items. And you were asked if you had tried to engage them, I believe, to move the stainless steel tables, and you said no. Where physically were these football players when they were moving items?
the school buildings,
Various buildings?
2 days, it was Tuscarora Valley, Fayette, and Thompson.
Did any of them ever go to your property that day?
Pardon me?
Did any of them go to your property that day?
No,
Was the shed up on the field yet as of that day?
no, at that time, I was still arguing and requesting a shed that I had requested in the summer and fall, and we had buildings that now were not occupied.
There were questions to you about specifically paragraph 14 of the complaint, and the statement is that when the sheds were delivered back to the school property, it was prior to any questions being raised about the permissibility, as it says, of Apple, storing those items temporarily on its private property. Had anyone come to you stating that you had done something wrong, that there was an investigation going on of you for wrongdoing at that time?
No, the issue was Dr. Yarger.
And you mentioned credit cards. What do you know about the credit card issue?
Dr. Yarger evidently had used credit card to repair his vehicle.
School credit card, was that the concern?
Yes.
Was Dr. Edler the first person who ever questioned you from the administration about the moving of the stainless steel tables on your property?
Yes.
Okay, no other questions?
Any recross based on Mr. Clark's questions?
And when Dr. Etter questioned you about the property, is that when you then sent the text to him that you referenced?
Yes.
And you sent photographs to justify what you had told him?
Yes. Told him I would.
And could you look at, it's Exhibit 1. In
No,
Are there photographs of the tables in question?
Could we have some clarification? Tables in question, what's that referring to?
The three steel tables that were taken to his property?
Thank you.
Are they shown in those photographs?
no,
Are the pots and pans that you took to your porch, to your residence, shown in those photographs?
no,
Are the kitchen racks shown in those photographs?
no,
Is the slicer shown in those photographs?
no. Because they had already been returned. I spoke with Dr. Etter on February 4th. The 27th, all of those items were already returned and where they were to be placed. February 4th, Dr. Etter spoke to me. And Tuesday, as you see in that exhibit, February 5th, I told him I withheld nothing from him. I told him I would photograph them and send to him, which I did along with the listing of everything that I either moved with Dr. Yarger or personally handled and brought into the buildings.
Is that the list attached to exhibit number 2?
Correct.
And under Roman numeral 1, it says placed in storage. Now I understand that means on your hunting ground, correct?
Or as it says there,
And it says 3 kitchen tables stainless.
correct?
I thought you just testified that there were only 2 kitchen tables stainless taken out to your property.
There were 2 tables taken to my property. He had 1, and I put that there. 3 kitchen tables, I gave an inventory. My mistake on that. But there were 2 loaded, as Mr. Cook explained, 2 unloaded, but he had a 3rd one, and that is it.
So the list is inaccurate?
Not in complete form, no. That's why I also said on there, Dr. Etter, any questions, please let me know. Because I put this together, I did not want to hide anything in any way, shape, or form to him. And I said that.
But placed in storage, you didn't say at my property, it just says placed in storage.
Correct. And later, I put that notation to myself on my ground when I was going through my notes, Mr. Knapp.
To clarify for yourself,
Yes?
Do we really need to have this? I think your point's clear. It wasn't on what was sent to.
Well, there was debate, if I may, Judge, there was debate as to all these things being stored on my property.
Oh, I understand. The point is, I think the testimony is clear. Your handwriting was not on the email you
Yeah.
sent to Dr. Etter.
No.
and now it's 2 tables instead of 3, that's.
Well, he's explained the 3 tables. Okay. I have some clarifying questions. It's gonna take more than 1 or 2 minutes, though. Is the board okay to go forward for a few minutes before we break? Or- Mr. Apple, going back to the beginning of your direct testimony, you made some reference about there being some controversy whether you were truly the second highest ranked administrator in the district. Can you just explain what you meant by that?
When the appointments went for director of secondary ed and elementary director of elementary ed, I was under the job description and idea that I was number 2 in the district as far as being able to do things and start planning things and utilizing things for the secondary. But as we moved forward, with Mrs. Holderman and myself, there was disagreement. Board members were approached, and Dr. Yarder came to me and told me that we had to sue this thing out, we had to share this. So the chain of command, yes, I was glad to hear that because I was not under the impression I was truly number 2.
Do you know, were you the second highest paid administrator in the
No,
district?
I don't believe so.
So if I understand your testimony, you had the understanding you were the second ranked administrator, but there were some questions whether the director of elementary ed was sort of co-number 2, is that fair
Correct.
characterization? just changing topics, I want to hear your reaction to something that Dr. Kovac had testified to. He had testified about a meeting with you on March 6, 2019, when he advised you that your unpaid suspension would be served in consecutive days.
Correct.
Okay. And his testimony was that you became emotional and upset at that meeting with him. Was that accurate by him?
Yes, and it's still accurate. It's more controlled at this point, yes.
And did you tell Dr. Kovac at that March 6th meeting that you believed the school board was out to get you because of a quote-unquote slush fund, which he testified was a term you had used? That
Yes, I'd heard about that, and then with the prior meeting with Dr. Etter on February 11th, I had no reason but to believe that.
Okay. And had the meeting with Dr. Etter on February 11th, though, did not concern any discussion of the slush fund, is that correct?
No.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I didn't realize it was even an issue.
Well, what was on your mind when you brought it up to Dr. Kovac on March 6th?
Pennsylvania State Police were questioning my office secretaries and staff in reference to allegations being made by either administration or board to the state police for investigation of petty cash. Yes, I call it a slush fund as a joke in this day and age, but yes, it was a petty cash fund.
Okay. But that's what you had in mind when you were talking to Dr. Kovac, and that's what I wanted to
Yes.
say. Thank you for clarifying that. There was some testimony by another witness, I forget whom, that you had made mention, or there was some mention that the money you said you had left on the table at the luncheon was for a tip. Did you intend it to be a contribution toward a tip?
Tip and or my meal or beverage, because again, I'm a 25-year plus veteran of the educational system. I cannot go into an establishment, have 2 beers or 3 drinks, leave, and have the school district pay for it. I'm not that ignorant to that.
And could you clarify a little bit what happened after the luncheon? You said you went to Mr. Condo's residence. Who drove and who rode, and just explain that?
I drove the counselors. They had not seen the construction at Juniata in detail. So we came to Juniata Elementary School, took a look around. We did not get out. We did not walk the property. We did not walk into the construction site area. They wanted to see how it was being configured. Kurt knew more than what Lisa did. But then we went to Monroe's site, because that was curiosity from the standpoint, how are you going to converge a building of that size onto that property, what they knew it was. And again, we drove past, at that point in time, the construction was a lot of concrete pads, walls starting to go, but starting to see how it was going to be laid out in that property. Not walking around, not walking through the old existing structure or anything of that magnitude.
So that I'm clear, you were driving and the 2 counselors were passengers?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately what time did you arrive at Mr. Condo's residence?
That's over a year ago, sir. To be honest, it was my birthday, it wasn't a party, it was a lunch and an afternoon that I took off. And I'm going to be honest, in the bigger scheme of my endeavors and that evening, my family party and stuff, it was not that big a deal. So I can't exactly tell you what time frame, but I'd say maybe 2 o'clock, 2:30.
Thank you. I want to switch topics and talk about January 1st and fill in some
Okay.
blanks. As between you and the former superintendent on January 1st, who drove the district truck to Lackawanna School?
Dr. Yarder.
And after the tables were loaded onto the district truck, who drove the truck to your hunting land?
Dr. Yarder.
And at what point during that situation was the decision made to drive the trucks to your hunting land?
Once he came out, crossed the blinking light and headed to Cedar Spring Road. It's like, he wanted to take him there. I said, you're not gonna use them. He wanted to use them as meat tables for hunting. And I told him repeatedly, that's not gonna happen. But heading out Cedar Spring Road, his intention was to go to my ground and on Lebanon.
So that I'm clear, when you were loading the tables into the truck, when you got
Correct.
into the truck,
Correct.
up to that point, you had no idea you were going to your hunting land?
No.
Correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. So, if the intent was to safekeep the tables, and you could not on January 1st access the district buildings you want the tables to go into, why didn't you just leave them at Black Tuscarora?
He wanted to take them out.
There was no reason to believe the tables would be destroyed if they had remained at Black Tuscarora, correct?
And at that point, I didn't know what existed in the other buildings. I had no idea.
So you could have, as far as you were aware, left them at Black Tuscarora, and if necessary, left a note on them that said, keep these tables here, they have other uses.
Well, that's been tried. I know that was tried with the consolidation with the elementary buildings with, like my wife was a teacher. That didn't happen. So that idea, no. That wasn't going to work, Judge. I saw that.
First of all, you don't have to call me judge, you can
I'm sorry.
call me, that's okay.
Your judge, that's what I thought.
So is your testimony the same with the meat slicer and also the other items taken from the schools on January 12th that you didn't think it was wise or prudent to just leave them where they were until you could move them to the intended location? You thought they needed to be removed temporarily?
No, I didn't think it was wise. Because at that point in time, there was stuff being moved. As you heard from Mr. Cook, things were disappearing and going places. And as the superintendent gave me authority to start looking at utilizing things for secondaries, I wasn't going to wait. If you gave me that authority my whole career, if I've been given the directive and a go-ahead to move and do, I have and done. That's been my entire career.
So, just to clarify what you said and put it in the context of some of the other testimony, the inventory you had written out on January 11th,
Okay?
I believe the testimony was that that inventory listed items that were scheduled to be moved
And Dr.
to other
Yorker,
locations, correct?
and Dr. Yorker had asked me then to look at our trade boys and football players to help move those things from January 11th.
So am I correct then that the items you took on January 12th were not listed on the inventory? Is that accurate?
No, not all of it. Some of it was sitting there, like I said, as junk and trash cans. Some of the other things were not. Not all of it was on the inventory. You are correct.
Well, I thought the purpose of the inventory was to identify on a document items that were already identified to be moved to other locations. Is that correct?
Somewhat, yes. The inventory on the 11th was created for things to be moved to Mountain View Elementary, to be there for teachers to pick from. Dr. Yarger had stated a plan, Mr. Mon, Ms. Fuller, and myself, for teachers to pick from for use of those items in their classrooms.
So there was already a plan for the
There's a
items
plan
on the
for those
inventory.
items, but the items that I moved on Saturday the 12th, I handpicked for what I wanted to do with the Student Learning Center and with their concessions at Juniata High School.
And so some of the items you moved on the 12th were on the 11th inventory and some were not, is that
I
correct?
have to really sit and study that,
Okay, so you don't know, is that,
not for sure.
thank you. again, I'm just trying to clarify some things that were not entirely clear to me. If you could please turn in the Apple exhibit binder to exhibit 2. This is the email you had sent to Dr. Eder with the list.
Correct.
And I want to make sure I understand under item 1, it says placed in storage. Am I correct that all the items under A were taken to your hunting land with the exception of one of the kitchen tables?
Correct.
And where were the items under 1B stored?
In an old camper, out of the weather, because they were cushioned chairs and rollback chairs. You couldn't leave those sit out in the weather.
So that's Mr. Fossey's trailer on your hunting land?
That I purchased, yes.
Okay.
It's not his any longer.
I understand that it's your trailer. You purchased from him?
Yes.
Okay. But it's on your hunting land, and that's where the items B
Yes.
location.
Yes.
Thank you. And the items under C were taken to your personal residence, is that correct?
Yes.
You testified that Dr. Eder was the first administrator from the district who spoke to you about taking the property from January. I'm trying to keep my volume.
Oh, are they all on?
Well, no, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. You testified that Dr. Eder was the first administrator from the school district, or first person on behalf of the school district administration who spoke to you about having removed district property from January. And my question is, what discussions did you have with other district personnel, not from the administration, between January 1 and the time Dr. Eder spoke with you concerning the removal of school district property?
I had a phone call from a board member
What was-
in regards to Dr. Yard.
And what day was that call?
17.
Did you have discussions with any other district personnel about your having taken or not taken property to your hunting land?
I had made comments about it and even reference to Dr. Yarger and the issue and thought of all this stuff, just letting them go for junk, were not being utilized. Yes,
And who did you have those discussions with and when?
different administrators in January.
How about custodians?
Yes,
Mr. Cook?
no.
How did Dr. Yarger get the one table to his home, do you know?
I'm not sure because I wasn't with him. I wasn't around him when he,
Do you know when he did that?
I'm not sure as I stated. It was prior to January 1st.
Would you please turn in the district administration exhibits to exhibit 33? Which has been identified as the affidavit you have signed in connection with the civil lawsuit. And please turn to the second page, paragraph 9. And there you're talking about your meeting of February 11 with Dr. Eder, correct? Are you with me, sir, on paragraph 9?
Apple's intent?
No, on exhibit 33, second page, paragraph 9.
Yes, I'm there, I see it.
And there you say in your affidavit that Dr. Eder threatened you with the filing of charges if you would not agree to an unpaid 5-day suspension. Do you see that?
Yes,
Now, that's the same reference you made during your last hearing. You said Dr. Eder said something about charges if you did not agree to the 5-day suspension. Am I correct that you assumed when he said filing of charges, that you assumed he meant criminal charges?
he said state police.
Okay. Well, you didn't say that at the last hearing, and you didn't say that in your affidavit. That's what I'm trying to get
Criminal
clarified.
charges, that's what I looked at that.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
You're saying that he said something about filing of charges, but you didn't say in your affidavit, and you didn't say last week, that he threatened to file criminal charges. He just, according to you, had said charges. That's what I'm trying to get clarification on. So you understood when he said charges, he meant criminal charges. But he might have meant charges of dismissal, correct?
Yes.
I have no further clarifying questions. Does the board have any further questions? All right, you may step down.
Well, I have some follow-ups to
Oh,
that.
please, go ahead.
Mr. Apple, specifically as to that point, you're laboring without the benefit of a microphone, but in response to one of Mr. Kellen's questions, you mentioned the state police. Can you expand on that as to what you were saying about any reference to the state police?
Dr. Eder met with me on February 11th in my office. As I said in the last meeting, he said to me if I did not sign the agreement, he was issued by the board to press charges with the state police. I looked at it as he's pressing charges. I looked at it with the state police, not necessarily grounds for dismissal.
And going back to just a couple of the things Mr. Kellen had asked you about, he had asked you that when the tables were put on the truck, where you expected them to go, and you said not to your hunting ground, where were you expecting they would go?
At that point, I had no idea because as I said in my last statement, last meeting, I had no keys. I came to Dr. Yarger at Fermanagh. I was under the impression we were going to LAC, as he told me to view the building, and I would see what I could utilize in the secondaries.
When did it become apparent to you that you wanted the tables on your hunting ground?
When we started down Route 75 and got out to Port Royal.
And did he say that to you, or
He
what?
wanted to use them as meat tables.
And so you had that discussion with him at that time?
Yes.
Lac Tuscarora, where you went on January 1st, did you know if the district had any plans for that? What to do with that building now that it had been closed?
That building was closed and the property to be sold.
Did that factor into your concern about the items inside not being there if you didn't remove them?
Yes.
Thank you, no other follow-up.
I have a thought. On January 1st, you, as the number 2 guy in the district, the superintendent, go to LAC Tuscarora, and you run into Glenn Cook, who is an employee of the district, correct?
Yes.
You didn't think to tell Glenn Cook, I want you to secure these items because I plan to use these for the boosters on that day. You didn't say anything like that to Glenn Cook?
No, I had a discussion with Glenn Cook and Ken Berry that day.
Why, if you're the number 2 guy in the district, are you moving tables out of Black Tuscarora, which is a locked building, and not telling Glenn Cook, the custodian, to secure them instead?
I guess my question comes back, I'll answer that. Why not?
Or had you moved any items before January 1st?
Yes,
What items did you move before January 1st?
I helped my wife move her items out of Monroe Elementary School. And then I moved her items, helped her do different things at Monroe Elementary School with her classroom.
You heard Christy Halderman's testimony. Did you help with that effort with her and I believe Mr. Fossey and Ms. Kramer and those individuals move stuff? Or did you move stuff with that?
Not that day, I was unavailable. I didn't know it was mandatory for me to be there either.
No other questions?
In January, there was no imminent sale of Black Tuscarora, correct?
From what I understood, the business sales were being prepared, and if anything wanted to be utilized and taken out, it needed to be done. That's what I understood from Dr. Yarger in regards to that, and as well as Ms. Kamala.
What did Mr. Miley tell you about having to move things immediately out of Black Tuscarora?
At that date, he hadn't, but later on in January, if we wanted to move anything, it had to be done.
No further questions. You may step down. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break.